Buckle up, everyone, and welcome to Carpool Rugby League, a show where two rugby league tragics talk everything rugby league on your way to and from work. I'm Shano.
I am the Chameleon.
Welcome aboard and on with the show. Well, Chameleon, we have been had a bit of a hiatus for 2 weeks, away on holidays and whatnot, but we are back, ready and raring. Magic round coming up. This basically for me, and I know we're going to talk about Thursday's game, but this is the run into Origin for me. This is where we start looking at what possible teams we can have. I think next week we might earmark for possible teams and whether we align with what we think and what we don't think. We've got the women's game on Thursday, which is best of three, thank God. We've got a myriad of things happening. Before we do that, let's just dip into last week's games. If you were living under a rock and you weren't 100% sure what was happening on Anzac round, I've got to say I was at Woolgoolga watching the parade and whatnot. Massive shout out to that community. It was fantastic. The kids from Woolgoolga High School, I'm pretty sure they're from Woolgoolga High School, happy to be corrected, who held the flags in the pouring rain. Far out, guys. You were absolutely exemplary in what you did, and I take my hat off to you because you were brilliant. And we deal with kids daily, and I'd be more than happy to have any of those kids in any situation that any classroom I was in. But we had the Broncos at Suncorp absolutely hammer the Bulldogs 42-18. The Roosters, in what was a one-sided affair in the usual Allianz Stadium match, 46-18. The Warriors, aren't they proving to be something that most thought they weren't? They won 26-12. South Sydney woes continue, and further suspension injury concerns. They lost to Melbourne Storm 24-16. Cowboys 50-18. Did not see this on the cards. I did not think the Cowboys had 50 in them, but definitely hit there. Seagulls, what was a very tight game for a massive chunk of it, ran away with it 26-10 over the Penrith Panthers. Raiders 40, Dolphins 28, and in what was a game that I actually really enjoyed watching, and in some ways it was just one of these interesting games. But it was the Tigers won 20 points to 18. If we want to look at the NRL table, as that the week it was round 8. After round 8, we have the Bulldogs still at number 1, 14 points, one game away. Storm, Raiders, Warriors. We then have the Broncos on 10, Cowboys on 10, Sharks on 8, Seagulls 8, Tigers 8, Dragons 8, Souths 8. We then have the Dolphins, Roosters, Titans, and Eels on 6, and the Penny Panthers on the bottom of the table on 4 points and 2 wins. I got asked a myriad of questions this week, Griff, about the 2 points for a bye. We've talked long and hard about this over the years on why we get 2 points for a bye. And I haven't brought this up yet. I actually did some research over the off-season and found out why we got 2 points for a bye. And here it is. It's got to do with win-loss ratios. So if we didn't have 2 points for a bye, we would have win-loss ratios, which would basically be a percentage of wins versus losses. And I got asked, and a few Panthers fans have seen me during the week, going, it's unfair. And it is unfair. However, the NRL did state when the 2 point for a bye came in that if they didn't and ran with a percentage system, that basically on teams of equal amounts of wins, it would come down to percentage. Now, my honest belief is they didn't believe the average NRL fan had the cranial capacity to cope with that, so they gave each team 2 points for a bye. Interesting, but there it is. That Panthers are on the bottom with 2 wins. However, for and against would be above those above them, and it would just need their 2 points to solidify that. Griffo, lots of footy this week. What caught your eye?
Okay, I'm just going to go back one round.
Yeah, by all means.
Well, initially, and what caught my eye was Mitch Moses
Yes,
when he came back for the Tigers against
Very
Para.
good. Very good.
He was outstanding. A
He was
long injury and
brilliant.
layoff.
He was good.
Amazing return and amazing transformation of that team as a result of one player coming in and everyone else played better. I just thought Moses was brilliant. He led them to victory. From the round just past, another halfback who plays a vital role in his team's fortunes, and that's Adam Reynolds from the Broncos. You mentioned they had the big win over the Bulldogs, and I didn't really see that coming. Not that I thought the Broncos weren't a chance, but I certainly didn't see a walloping. It was largely due to Reynolds, who was outstanding. He scored a try. He had 3 try assists, and he just makes such a difference to this side. And a lot of talk at the moment about Broncos looking forward, basically saying, look, we can't really pay you much at all if you want to stay with us next year. Reynolds is talking about the possibility of going somewhere else. He'll be 35, 36. He's approaching 300 games. He's obviously missed a lot of games over his career due to injury. But when he's on the field, he certainly adds a great deal to this team. So it's Adam Reynolds who gets the grab this week.
Fair call, because he was great. He was very good again in that game, and they really took it. And he's able to galvanise everything. Like I know when I suppose I can speak a lot about Adam Reynolds because I've seen him play from his junior years, and he was someone who said sometimes the best defense you've got is your attack. That if you can kick into corners and you can make a team work and work and work, and that's what he did his attacking is brilliant. That short that he had, and in some ways still does have the best short kicking game in the competition. His ability just to put it on a dime, it's just second to none. And when he does it, it's just it is outstanding. I suppose a few tidbits from me, Griffo.
Could be a few tidbits. There's been a lot happening.
Yeah. Geez, it's been nuts. I suppose we'll go through the suspensions and whatnot, and 10 in the bins and this, that, and the other when we do the team lists. Actually, no, we'll bring it up now because I'd like to get your thoughts. Last week, it really did seem like there was a bit of a crackdown on whether when a player hit the head of the opposition. What was your take on the games that you saw? Did you think that the majority of them were a-okay fine, or did you think, wow, we're getting that point again where, there's a classic meme that I saw this morning where it was like the bunker intervened and said there was a head knock that happened 2 weeks ago. You got 10 in the bin. What was your take on it all?
Yeah, look, I think most of the sin bins are, understandable.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The fact is, you cop someone in the head, you cop 10 minutes.
Yeah.
As long as it's consistent. And
That's it. That's what I'm with.
There were some that were, and there were some that weren't. Like, Isaiah Yo, he got Turbo, I think. When the Turbo fell in, he slipped over, but he still contacted him in the head, and he got away with nothing. No charge, no nothing. And, that's not a guy I want out of the team. Don't get me wrong, but then there were others that probably deserve more. Tupanua is.
Tupanua's a lucky
He's only
boy.
got 5 weeks for 2 incidents, and
I thought he could have had another couple on the sideline. Yeah. I thought especially not being sent off, I thought he was lucky to survive a week. I'm with you, Griff. I think there's a consistency issue. And what I'm concerned with in the consistency issue is they're starting to talk about this thing about being reckless and being careless. And one thing, terminology which is starting to come out of this is with force. Now, I'll give you an example. I was coaching some young ladies for the last few weeks. I've been coaching some young ladies on football. These are girls that most of them have not played before, and they were worried about getting hurt. And one of the things I said to them was we went through technique and learnt proper technique, as you should learn proper technique, and that helps a lot. And I said the one thing which really helps you is you go in the tackle committed, I'm happy to have anyone contact me via our Facebook page and tell me anything that's wrong here. But I always say to anyone I coach, and I've coached young men and young women rugby league over the years, as have you, Griff. I always say that technique is first and foremost. You need to feel safe on the field, and the other thing is you have to be committed to what you do. If you're going to do a run, you have to commit it. There's a lot of press about that poor young kid who got his shoulder blade broken. Whoever coached him to run like that needs, like if he was taught to run like that, that's a problem. He was upright and stopped in a tackle. You had someone moving very quickly and hit him, and whether the tackle was legal or not, it was a very hard tackle. That's the thing. And I always say to people, you have to be committed. My concern with force is this: if you don't commit to a tackle, you will get hurt. You'll actually really get hurt. You have to be conscious of where your head is in the tackle, and you have to be committed. When we start saying that you've gone into the tackle with force, I would imagine every tackle has force applied to it. I understand that if the shoulder hits the head, that's a problem, especially if they're falling. But if you've got a falling player and you're being told you went into the tackle with force, you don't go into a tackle with force, you get hurt. I think the referees need to go back to the drawing board a little bit. And maybe it's the terminology, maybe I'm reading a bit too much into it. But I really think they need to go back to the drawing board and understand, okay, what constitutes... And I think this is where coaches can come in. I think it's been long overdue. We need coaches and referees and players to get together and say, right, okay, when I'm going in for the tackle, I'm looking at their hip section. And within milliseconds, they get dropped or slip, and their head's where I was going to. I can't pull out of that. As for control, that's different. I think players can control their actions. But when I'm hearing words like force being applied to players getting sent in the bin, I'm really uncomfortable with that. I think control, yes, you are out of control. Like Dylan Napa, for example. I think his tackling technique he was out of control. That's my opinion. I suppose a lot of people agreed with that. I just don't think force is the right message, because if we're sending... Look, I always say, anyone not in the NRL plays rugby league. The NRL's a different game. Don't try and coach young kids to play NRL. It's not going to happen. And this is what I've had many arguments, and I've had many butted head with many people, because I said, if you're trying to coach NRL tactics to juniors, you're an idiot. Teach them rugby league. When they get there, eventually they'll learn the NRL. We're not trying to coach the NRL, but I think the message is very important around how we talk about things. And I think, I think there were some things that have been said that need to be tweaked a little bit. I think there's certain, if any contact with the head constitutes 10 to bin, okay. But if someone goes in for a very controlled tackle with force and they fall into it, well then, and it's just a tackle. It's nothing more, nothing less. I'm at the point, and I don't mean to be rude here, but there has to be a shit happens clause, surely, for someone who has the correct technique, the correct engagement, but they just got it. What we're asking is we're asking the defender to correct in a millisecond their action for when the attacker gets it wrong. And we're on a slippery slope here where we could see 3 or 4 sin bins a game. That's not good viewing, in my opinion.
No, it's not, but I mean, the parameters have been set. There are accidents, and that's the issue. That there are accidents, as you mentioned. But they're taught to tackle now around the chest. When I played Rugby-League, and we were taught to tackle around the legs.
Griff, if a legs tackle was made dominant, we'd solve
we'd see it. This. I know. There's no doubt.
We've had this chat for it must be 15 years since the dominant come in. Make a good legs tackle a dominant tackle.
Yeah, look.
And the flop killed it. I don't get the flop.
Yeah.
But a good legs tackle, if someone, it should be, if you get chopped down, you're allowed to be held down for a certain length of time.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's, it's not a side issue, really. It's related, but I think as long as they're consistent.
Yeah, same here.
If they are, we will see the hits come down because teams don't want to play a player short.
No.
And they'll change their tackle technique.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Well, with the wrestling and the chicken wings and whatnot, it did change. I did think of you when this was announced and what we've been saying for years. It looks like the NRL have given in principle agreement to the Bears being based out of Perth. All the CEOs of the current Rugby League teams said they would not block it in any way, shape or form, which means that basically, according to the timeline set out by the NRL and ARL and the Commission, in 2027 we will see, we don't know their name yet, they'll be called the Bears, they'll wear the red and black, playing out of Perth, with 2028 being the PNG inclusion. Griffo, I cannot tell you how happy, ecstatic, and just joyful I was that we not only now have a team in Perth, and I think, we might be jumping the gun a little bit, but I reckon it's happening. Not only do we have a team in Perth, but it is one of our foundation clubs, the North Sydney Bears.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not that fussed about the Bears either way. But it is good that supporter base, which is quite significant, given that the guys have not been in the comp for over 25 years, but the diehards have never given up, and I'm happy for them.
If they actually, so they're unofficially the largest member base of any club. They have 200,000 on their books.
Yeah,
and I understand that comes from a lot of, that could be $20 join and be a part of us.
Yeah,
I do get that, but NRL clubs and my team included, you make your pets members because that just helps the club. And clubs do that now. It's like if they can get another 50 people, 50 names or 50 memberships, that's your survival. And we've said this before. We're massive fans of membership. That's your survival, and I think they've got a look. I'm just stoked. We've got a team in the West.
Yeah, that's the main thing for me. And we've been talking about it, as you said. We've talked about it for years, on and off the podcast. We want to be the National Rugby League, not just the Eastern Seaboard Rugby League.
I think we had a great discussion probably about round 2 or round 3 in the podcast about that.
Yeah. And we could say the same for the round 2 or round 3 podcast 4 years ago. But,
right. We just keeps.
And it just makes sense, and it makes sense. And I want to see the game flourish, and you've got quite a large potential new audience. The word expansion means you're going into new frontiers, and the expansion teams in recent years are, been welcome. Certainly, I've got to take my hat off to the Dolphins and what they've done. But how many new people it's brought to the game of rugby league, I'm not sure. Whereas this is a new city for rugby league in terms of we don't have a team there. We have had in the past. But I think it's about 2 million people living in Perth these days, approximately. It's a big market, and it gives the TV new time zone in which to put rugby league on. It opens up for and traditionally Perth has had a lot of junior rugby league players, but obviously they'd have more if those guys had something. Think, well, I can stay here in Perth and I can become a professional rugby league player now. I don't have to move anywhere else. So I think it's going to attract more players to the game. Certainly more fans. They're very parochial over in WA. They get behind their local sporting team, irrespective of what team it is. And I'm really happy about it. Like, it makes sense. The PNG thing is a different thing. It's more political. I'm not as enthused about that for the reasons of politics, but it certainly will give those young men and women in PNG, assuming that sometime down the track they may have a women's team, but particularly for the young boys, that'll give them again more incentive to go into pathways. I mean, they love the game. It's the only country in the world where rugby league is a national sport, so they're always going to be supporters. But now they're going to really have an incentive to make it as a professional sports person, and then the pathways will be there for them to do so.
And we know the NRL are talking about the compound method rather than the cans option.
Yeah, well, the cans option was never... That's not... To me, that wasn't expansion. That was just...
No, I agree.
Another team in North Queensland. Yeah. But, fortunately, the NRL, say, no, this team is from Papua New Guinea. They're going to play their home games there. I mean, it'd be crazy not to, but... and there's, some logistical things that have got to happen, but the money's there for that to be able to happen. They've put off a 20th team till after the Brisbane Olympics, I heard. I heard a very interesting proposal put forward by one of the journals from the Nine side of Rugby League reporting, Michael Chammas, who's put forward the idea, and I think it's a great idea, of having that 20th team come out of Hawaii. I don't know if you've heard that or not, that idea, Shano, but
No.
to break into the American market,
Well,
again, another time zone, and it becomes, a team
well, it's
for
not
the
light years
Pacific.
away. Yeah.
Now, I also heard a conversation between that journo and Peter V'landys, and V'landys has sort of thought, he's actually quite liked the idea and presented it to Andrew Abdo. Now, that's down the track, and it may never not happen, but it makes so much sense.
Well,
looking at expanding the game, and Hawaii is, I think it's about 8 hours from Sydney. It's probably an hour less from Brisbane. But logistically, it's not that difficult, and it does open up very much the American market. They don't have any professional sports out of Hawaii. They only have sort of college teams, but they're building a new stadium.
Big University of Hawaii is big. Big.
Then I was over there a couple of months ago, and
of course that's why when Hawaii came out with Cal, Hawaii was one of the teams. It was just logistically simpler, and I went and watched them at Acor. As logistically, it was easy. It was a great game.
Yeah. So that that's down the track, and I like the idea. I know South Island and New Zealand's another one that I do like, but I think to open up a new nation and really get a bit of a foothold.
I agree.
Into that American market makes so much sense.
I suppose I don't like the idea. It's funny. 3 years ago, I could see the point that now I can't. I don't like the idea of the second New Zealand team, and people are like, why? New Zealand Warriors at the moment are just a juggernaut in that country. They're selling out stadiums. They're doing. If you had another entity in that country, like the whole country's gotten behind this team. If you had another entity in that country, you would get the Wars selling out stadiums and this new entity, 5,000 people. I think for the moment, and I said it back when they wanted Wellington in, and I said, no, you got to get New Zealand firing. New Zealand are firing now. Just leave it alone. They're doing everything they need to do. And you know what? I never thought about Hawaii as a possible, but you know what? It market it properly, and with the right input. And although we're the NRL, get that US support behind them, and if you get 5% of the population watching them, the TV rights alone are just astronomical.
The possibilities are amazing.
One other thing regarding the NRL, and I suppose it's not expansion, but somewhat take over the idea of buying 33% in the English Super League. It hit an interesting point during the week where there was some concerns that the Catalans Dragons would not be a part of the Super League moving forward, which is ridiculous. They should be, and how the Super League need the NRL to take over this 33%. Looking at it, the Super League over the Easter weekend, like the NRL, actually had the most successful weekend for people turnout in a long time, as did the NRL. I just think if the NRL could work out a way to take 33%, it's the Super League's a funny thing. But I just think it will help the competition immensely. I actually have had 4 separate discussions with people who love rugby league, and all 4 don't necessarily agree with me. But I'm going to say this: we're sending our team over for an Anzac not for an Anzac, sorry, for a Ashes Test series. 2 of those 3 games are sellouts. With one of them, 80,000 seat stadium, almost a sellout. I think the time is ripe to start spending money in England. And you know what? Imagine a competition in 15 years' time that's not only flourishing, that will have a Western team for sure, that may have this Hawaii team, I hope it does, but also is backing a very, very talented and successful Super League competition, where we're just getting the best players, rugby league players in the world, playing in the best competitions. I genuinely think and hope that this takes place. One of the biggest issues I know people say is that the TV deal went from £40 million to £20 million. The main reason for that is you've got 3 tiers in the Super League. You've got this tier of teams who are NRL standard. You got this next tier of teams who aren't, and this bottom tier of teams who are awful. We know they don't have a relegation system anymore, which means I think we need teams like the London Broncos coming back in the competition. I think if the NRL took over this competition, you'd have the right teams, would have a good sense of playership, but furthermore, it would grow the international game. And you know what? The interest around NRL, like we're talking about Catalans Dragons, they're thinking about binning them. Catalans Dragons get at least 10,000 people per match to their game. Now, I think that's a very good result, and they add to the viewership. They've been very successful over recent times. I just think that the NRL's input and people like Peter V'landys would absolutely elevate this competition. I think if we want to grow the game globally, as it seems like we do, and we want to, we've helped teams like Samoa, Tonga. I think if we can start doing this, like imagine going into Wembley, and I'm pretty sure Wembley's the last one, isn't it?
No, it's first one.
First one. What's the last one? Everton sold out. What's
Leeds.
that?
Leeds is the last.
Leeds is the last one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Imagine going to the Leeds 1-1. This is what you need. You need this kind of growth, and I just think that it seems like it's very much on the cards that the NRL will take over 33% with the option for more.
Yeah, it's not just the money. It's just saying, well, we take over the complete administration.
Yeah, that's right. Admin. Yeah, and that's what's needed. They've just to give people context. Why the Super League is struggling and teams just seem to be struggling. During COVID, the government offered loans to keep sporting clubs afloat, and people took them up. All the Super League teams took them up. They were exactly what they said. They were loans, and now the government are asking for their money back, and it principally means that over the last few years, teams have been running week by week. I think Salford for a while there, the Devils, they weren't sure if they could pay their players because the government said if you don't give us the loan, we just foreclose on everything. So, we're in Australia. We look at our rugby league competition, and our government was very keen to see us flourish and give the people what they want. I know they actually I remember the supercars. I'm pretty sure they gave the supercars a little bit of coin to run their competition. In England, it was loans, and the English government want their money back, and that at the moment is really hitting certain clubs who paid maybe certain administrators and coaching staff more than what they should have. They run on a salary cap that's, I think, I don't think it's up. I'm happy to be corrected, but last I remember, I think it was 4.9 to $5 million. We won. Ours is 11.9 million. Oh, £5 million. No, it's not even that. I think it's £3.9 million. Now that I come to think of it, and I know dollars to pounds and whatnot, but it's significantly less than what we run ours at, and I think that we need to grow the talent there. I don't think I'm out of line when I say that. Outside of the Burgesses, the Sam and the three, Bateman, we really haven't had. Outside of those players, we really haven't had, like Sam Tompkins. I think he's struggling to find he'll pretty much be forced retirement next year. We haven't seen players come over, and I just think it's that development and that skill set that they need. So anyway, I think it's only good for the game if we build it in England. I think it's a good thing, and like they've got their magic round coming up in Newcastle. So, it's. I think if we can help, especially administratively, we will see a very, very flourishing competition. And you know what? They've got skill over there. They've got some skillful players, and we see that in the World Club Challenge when they come out. We see at times very tight matches with very skillful players, and we just need that to be emulated in all aspects of their competition. We've got a round of football coming up, Griffo. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, we might touch on a few things as we get to certain teams, but because there's been a lot happening over the last few weeks.
Yes.
A lot happening.
Lots. Lots and lots. Yep. Well, let's start with Thursday. If I can get it up.
State of Origin.
State of Origin. Love this. Gee whiz, Shano. There it is. At Suncorp Stadium. In Brisbane at 7:45 on Thursday, we have the Queensland Maroons taking on the Blues of New South Wales. The women's State of Origin game 1. I'll go through them as positions because I think it's fair. It's really interesting. Tamika Upton, captain of the Maroons, an absolute champion. Up against Abby Church. Interesting, actually. I will actually do a quick segue. I listened to a really good interview from Ali Brigginshaw, who actually spoke about this game and its positioning and its timing. It's actually, when she spoke about it, I really think we may need to actually think about bringing the women's NRL games forward if we're going to have the games here. She was talking about She was talking about where they picked a certain amount of Queensland players, and they were just playing against each other and trialing and without a lot of basically in their off season. So a little segue. Just remember that a lot of these players haven't played football. So when you look at the teams and what's been picked, if you're thinking, maybe, how did that player get picked, or why did it? To have a think about it, there's been very few opportunities outside of last year for these guys to shine. So Tamika Upton, captain, up against Abby Church, which cracking. That's if you're talking about rugby league, that's just a great matchup to begin with. Julia Robinson for Queensland, Jamie Chapman for the Blues. On the other side, we have Jasmine Peters, Jermaine Frezard. Shanae, I always get her name. Sasiolka for Sasolka. I always bugger that up. I practiced that about 5 times before we went on air too. Jessica Surges and Rory Owen up against Isabel Kelly. 5/8 And interestingly, you probably may have thought, why didn't we mention it at winger? Well, Tiana Penatani is for the Blues. Taryn Aiken, and who's always there for both teams, really. Ali Brigginshaw and Jesse Southwell are the sevens for either side. Bookends, Keely Joseph and Simiana Taufa, for the Blues. Joseph, of course, for the Queensland side. Elliston and Ellie Johnson for the Blues. Lauren Brown for Queensland is on number 9, and Keely Davis is the number 9 for the Blues. Look, I reckon this. When I talk about matchups, I reckon these are where it's at. You've got in the second row, Sienna up against Kezi Apps. We've got Teetzel up against Yasmin Clydesdale. I think that I really think that this is. I think that this is actually ripe for some wide running rugby league from both teams. It's going to be on. Destiny Brill locks the scrum for the Maroons, and Olivia Koenig for the Blues locks the scrum there. Interestingly, I probably won't go too far down the line, but Jada Ferguson, Sophie Hollyman, Mackenzie Worley, and Tavana Papali'i. That's the interchange bench for the Maroons. Jocelyn Kelleher, Kennedy Cherrington. If you want to read how pumped Kennedy Cherrington is for this game, jump on the NRL and have a good read. It's just brilliant. She's pumped. I tell you what, I almost wish she was in the starting side running off the back fence. She's pumped for it. Sarah Tokanuki for the Blues, and also Emma Veron is part of the interchange bench.
That just for the listeners who've never heard of Emma Veron.
Yep.
It's actually Emma Tonagato.
Yes. Yes, yeah. That's right.
Because I saw the name at first, and
yes.
I've never seen.
Sorry, I should have said that. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's just what she's listed as, but just to clear that up.
Yes, that is Emma Tonagato. So, that's the 1 to 17. If anyone else dips in there, we'll find out on the day. Really strong sides for both teams, Griff. Look, as a Blues fan, I like the Blues team. I think they've actually named a really, really strong side. Head to head, it's interesting. The Blues have won more. I suppose the previous meeting in June, where the Blues lost 22-6, will always weigh heavy. And then before that, 11-10. It's interesting when you look at Suncorp. The Blues have it. Like statistically, I just think that this team of the Blues, it really allows for them to run wide. I remember game 1 last year, Yasmin Clydesdale early ball running wide, and then it just allowed for that expansive play. It got all the teams, it got everyone involved, it got everyone interested. It really allowed for a more expansive play, and then you had, and we've seen players like Ellie Johnson run through, Kezi Apps as well. I just love it's. Look, Penatani at 5'8". She is someone who loves to really search for the football and do her thing. Jessica Surgis the same. Abby Church at fullback is a really exceptional player. Can I just say though, they're playing some of the biggest names in women's rugby league. Upton, Aiken. I don't know how many times we say Ali Brigginshaw might be past it and she comes out and has a blinder. Joseph, Papali'i, they're just. I got a gut feeling that the Blues forwards will lay a foundation that's just too strong for the Maroons. And I think Ali Brigginshaw, rather than playing this attacking football that she loves to play, the same with Tamika Upton, they'll be kicking it out of their own end and they'll be hoping for a mistake at the other end. And it's a very safe Blues side. Look, I got the Blues winning by a minimal amount, but we know that's because that's the ledger we live on. Griffo, what have you got?
Yeah, I'll tip the Blues here. New coach, strange coach, the Roosters man, who's been very successful. Father, of course, of Ethan Strange, who's doing great things with the Raiders, and his daughter, who it's Jessica. Yes. She's aligned herself with the English team.
Yes.
That's why they have an English mother. But so maybe she thought, well, I might be missing out on some rep jerseys for a while with what has been a very set centre pairing for the Blues over the years of Kelly and Sergius. But so Strange, he knows his rugby league, especially when it comes to the women's game. He's been very successful. I was quite critical last year of the coach and some of the choices she made in selection. They had the team that should have won, didn't. He's made changes, Strange. Some interesting ones. Players who are being picked in positions we don't normally associate them with. So you mentioned Penatani at 5'8". I'm not sure who it was last year. But the halfback, Jessie Southwell, I don't know if she's played for the Blues before. She's very talented.
She's a great player.
Yeah, she comes in for the Parramatta halfback, whose name is Pearson.
Pearson, yeah.
But I can't remember who the 5'8".
The thing with Pearson was I think she came in slightly out of form, but her kicking game was just exemplary.
Yeah, I think South was a better player.
I agree too. I think they've got it right.
Yeah. The one player missing from the wing that I thought would be there, who played for Australia over in Las Vegas, was Jakaya Whitfield. I'm not sure if she's injured or not.
I think she's injured, Griffo. I thought the same question, and I heard on the grapevine she's injured.
Okay, well, that would explain it. Jamie Prasad's been a very successful club player. She's won multiple competitions with the Roosters. I think she might have played with the Knights as well, and possibly even some Broncos success. So
she's a winner.
She definitely is. I know you've been a fan of Abby Church for some time. Jamie Chapman obviously is a match winner. They've got plenty of talent. I'm going to back the Blues, even though I do believe the best player on the field is wearing the number 6 for Queensland. And the second best player is probably wearing number 1 for Queensland. But I think the Blues overall
very true.
Do have a better side. But I've said that before, and not come up trumps the Blues and in some games where they absolutely dominated but didn't put a lot of points on, and then
that was that one
end
point
up losing,
loss,
and that's happened many times.
That 1 point loss last year, they just dominated for what felt like 80
too many times. Yeah. But they're just got to go up and win the game. They're capable of it. I'll be honest. I looked at who the referee is, and I saw this referee last Saturday night, and I don't care what gender the referee is. I just want him to be competent. And I'm sorry, but the referee, who I hadn't seen referee for some time, she'd been on the sidelines as a touchy. Belinda Sharp, I thought she was out of her depth last week in the Panthers Manly game. She got overruled a number of times by the bunker. It was insane, but I've seen her at this level before. and maybe I've not been impressed. And I'm being a bit harsh, perhaps, but as I said, I don't care what gender the referee is. I just want the best person for the job, and I just think she gets too many things wrong. But
I'll say, Griff, I think
I hope he proves me wrong.
I think there's a male referee that should have got dropped a couple of weeks ago who was still refereeing and has made the same mistakes and overruled and consistently. It seems like if they blow a penalty, just do a captain's challenge because it seems you'll win. But anyway, it doesn't matter about gender; it just matters about competency. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I hope she has a great game.
Well, so do I. But yeah.
She's obviously incredibly dedicated to be where she is. And I don't mean to be too negative. I'm just saying what I've seen. And, I just hope she has a good game. And I hope New South Wales win. I was about to say I hope the best team wins, but actually I don't. I just want New South Wales to win. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
I do think we will.
Excellent. Well, that kicks off Magic Round on Thursday night. On Friday, the 2nd of May, at the 6 o'clock game, the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks takes on the Parramatta Eels. All these are at Suncorp, so don't, I'm not going to tell you where they're at. I'm just going to tell you the time. Okay, so I suppose key ins for the Sharks are Brandon Hamueli. He's been named for the side. Of course, he's on I think he's been named.
I think he's on the
extended bench.
He's on the bench.
No, he's on the interchange. I dare say he may see we
haven't seen him since very early in the season, haven't we? Well, I think he got injured. So... I do think he played in Vegas.
Yes.
But
yes.
I think he got an injury.
Right, he's out, of course. Iro, he's in. He's been playing some fantastic football for the Parramatta Eels. Talangi is out. You have basically pretty much everyone else on an extended bench, except for no. I tell a lie.
No,
everyone else is on pretty much the extended bench. I was going to say, I have heard some whispers around Cartwright finding his way into the side. So
that'd be his first game for the year.
Yes, fine.
He's obviously not a favourite of Ryans. Ryans hasn't played him at all. Likewise, I'm not sure if Madison's played.
Madison definitely will be.
He's the 18th man.
Yeah, he's the 18th man. I think he'd be lucky if he's there. I just want us to talk about one guy with this game. Will Kennedy has. I think we've been saying it for a couple of years here in Carpool Rugby League. He really is a skillful fullback who has got his team at times in one of the best possible positions. I think I rate him highly. He has elevated his game over the last 4 to 5 weeks in a way that I didn't think was possible. He's leading the Dalian competition at the moment, and rightly so. He is playing some phenomenal football. When I look at that, I just think that he's like I said, I think he's playing some great footy. The Cronulla Sutherland Sharks are doing everything they need to do. They're not doing it pretty. Like, I'd rather win ugly than lose pretty. But they're doing it. The Parramatta Eels, with Mitchell Moses, all of a sudden look like a different side. They're coming up against the Cronulla Sharks side that, for me, is still somewhat inconsistent. I think that their middle work very hard to defend the missed tackles of their halves. I'll put it out there. I think if I was an opposition coach, I'd just say run it Hines and Trindle all day of the week. I think they're defensively, their centres are a bit disjointed, which Iro coming in might change that. I think that at times the Sharks fade in games. When they fade, they tend to concede points. However, when they get it all right, and they do it well, they can be a very formidable side. I don't think Brayley or McInnes is as steely in defence as they should be at the moment, which is why they're losing games like the one they lost last week. I've got the Sharks winning though, but geez, if Parramatta fans want an upset, and Mitchell Moses wants to fire, they may get it, but I think the Sharks just have too much across the board.
Yeah, I'm similar. I think the Sharks win this game. Talent-wise, I think they're probably more talented than the Eels overall. The Eels were very enthusiastic last time they played, and a lot of that, Moses was able to lift other players who hadn't been playing so well, improve, particularly Dylan Brown. One thing Para do have now is a fair bit of speed, and they can attack. The question is, can they defend? And we know that Cronulla will throw some decent attack at them. The Sharks, they've got some pretty damaging forwards in Fanua Blake, Britton Nickera. You got off the bench, you got Talakai, Hamlin Ueli. Those guys are hard to stop, and I think that's where the Sharks will win this game. They've obviously got some good finishes, and you talked about Will Kennedy. Not sure if he's still leading the Dally M for what that's worth, but he's right up there. He's
he was. Last I saw, he was leading it this week.
Okay, yeah. They have to win, the Sharks. They're, off the top of my head, I think they're 4-4. I might be wrong on that, but this is a team that would have expected to be in the top four. If you're going to be in the top four, you've got to beat Parramatta, because most other teams will. So I do think Sharks here.
At 8:05 on Friday, we have the Sydney Roosters taking on the Redcliffe. I call them Redcliffe. I don't care what anyone says. Dolphins. Some key ins and outs. So Chad Townsend's been named on an extended bench. Read into that what you will, along with Dominic Young. Read into that what you will. I actually think that the Roosters will be 1-17. Some ins for the Dolphins, however. Jeremy Marshall-King, Felice Kafusi, they are key ins for them. They're going to add some punch to this side. Both these sides are an enigma to me. How the hell at times the Roosters can just play the mismatched football that they play, and the Dolphins the same, it's bewildering. If these two teams bring the best of themselves, this is going to be one of the cracking matches of the year. If they bring the worst of themselves, mate, people will be turning off by 8:15. It's just one of those really strange games. It's I think people would say this is a flip the coin game. Do you just pick the home side? Well, technically the home side, the Roosters, is played in Brisbane, so in my opinion, the home side's the Dolphins. The guy who I think is going to be the key person, the key person for both sides, is the fullback, James Tedesco and a hammer. These are the players who are going to just open it up for them. Avarillo, Farnworth for the centres. It'll be interesting to see what Billy Smith can do. I think Mark N, he's a great player. He's doing some really good things. I think he's wasted on the wing. I think in centre.
Marky.
Yeah, Marky Mark. I think.
I think that's his best spot.
Yeah, I think
he
he's
gets
wasted.
found out in defence.
I know he lets him down in defence, but far out. He attracts so much. Last week,
he's a good ball in hand.
He's very good with ball in hand, and you're right. He's not good in defence, and I think if they can fix his defence, he would just attract so much attention. It's interesting that, and look, to be perfectly honest, I think he's a better wing option at the moment than Dominic Young, because Dominic Young he's just not in any vein of form. I am rambling right now because I'm struggling to pick the winner. I'm going to go Dolphins on this, Griff. I just think they're in Brisbane. It's not a home game for the Roosters. I don't care what anyone says. I am going to go the Dolphins, and you know what? I'm going to say that it's going to be the Hammer that has an absolute day out.
I'd agree with a lot of what you said, Shane. You just don't know which Roosters or which Dolphins
going to turn up
on a day, or even in the same game. I mean, the Dolphins they last week. They were going pretty well, and they end up getting pumped in the second half. This is a team who are very good in attack. They've got just that. It's just an amazing amount of speed in the back line. And you got Katoa, who's been a rebel. Well, it's not a surprise, but he is a great playmaker. And when you got the likes of the Hammer, Avarillo, Farnworth outside, Jack Bostock's good in the air. Saka's a much better player than when he was playing with the Broncos. There's plenty of firepower in the back line.
Can I just
the Roosters
say something, Griff, there? Sorry, Griff. I forgot to mention something before I threw to you. Mark Nichols is in at lock. I reckon that's purely a defensive move.
I've not seen him wear the 13 before.
Yeah.
I think
that's the tight.
The guy they call the psychopath is injured or suspended.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just to tighten up the middle.
I don't know. Look, I think the forwards will pretty much cancel each other out. It's just going to be what happens because both teams can be a bit suspect in defence. The Roosters' backline, they might not be as quick as their counterparts, but they know how to find a try. And I'm going to back the Roosters here. With no confidence because both teams can be hot and cold. But when both teams, when they are hot, are very, very good to watch. I'm gonna stick with the Roosters here, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Dolphins get up. Very evenly matched game.
At 3:00 on Saturday, we have the South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the Newcastle Knights. I suppose Latrell Mitchell, a key out. Sevilla Havili, he's also out. In for the Newcastle Knights, Sasai Fiti of the Jacob kind. Adam Elliott, he's found his way into the interchange bench as well. Very interesting when we look at the South Sydney side. Josh Schuster, he's on the interchange bench. He's part of the reserves, and it'd be interesting to see if he'd break his way into there. At the moment, it looks like it will be Jack Whiten at 5'8", although training today he may have injured himself, and Jaden Sullivan at 7. Is
that right?
Yep.
Possibly Whiten out.
Possibly. Look, the hot tip I have is that Whiten is in doubt.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you proof of that. South Sydney were favourites of this before that broke, and now they're not. Campbell Graham is in at centre, which I think is best position. On the other side, Bailey, Bentley, Harpe, he did not have the greatest game, but Jai Gray, who was leading the Daily M, is back at fullback. Up against Kalen Ponga, who is going to be absolutely ripe for Origin selection. Dane Gagai has been playing some fantastic football. Bradman Best, well, he would want to show his best coming forward to the Origin arena. My interesting point in all this is what will the forwards do for either side? You've got Kepi and Tavola up against Tola, and I think Tavita Tola is a very quality player. Sasai Fidi and Thompson. The key thing here is Tallis Duncan's playing second row. This is where South Sydney's at the moment. And Jai Arrow will be playing lock in the middle, just to show up the middle. Tallis Duncan's been off the bench. Liam LeBlanc in the side, I think is a good thing. Lachlan Hubner playing some good footy. Moale and Myers. South Sydney's injury toll plus the suspension of Latrell Mitchell, which I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. Really, last week it could be argued that South Sydney's best 10 minutes was when he was off. But it's fuck. Like, come on, mate. Like, seriously. I'm not having a crack, but shit. Like, yeah. Just watch back through the footage and find out what you see. Up against the Newcastle Knights side, who at times this year has played some really technically brilliant football. Who when they get the field position and they get Kalen Ponga engaged, Dane Gagai did a run last week. Yes, it was last week. He did a run last week, which was like vintage. I thought, jeez. It was brilliant to watch. Bradman Best is who we know. Look, you know who I'm tipping. I'm tipping South Sydney. If Jack Whiten doesn't play, Schuster has to come up, and I just want to see what happens there. It's, like our South Sydney's biggest problem is they're going to have the skinniest kicking game. For a long time. Their kicking game's going to be very, very scant. And it's going to rely on the forwards doing some pretty heavy lifting. And I think 60 minutes in, it might be too much for them. I'm picking South Sydney, and everyone knows why. But the Knights, if they hold the ball and they kick well, South Sydney will be in trouble.
Yeah, I did my tips. I think it could have been during the night. Trying to fill a bit of time in. And I tipped Souths.
Well, I talked you out of it.
Well, I didn't know about Whiten. I find it hard now. I've tipped Newcastle once or twice.
Oh, they're my... Yeah.
And... they've let me down, but they've just struggled to score points, which is strange when you've got guys to the caliber of Ponga, Fletcher, Sharp, Bradman Best, but they really struggle to get tries. And I sort of said, I can't pick this team. Currently, I've tipped Souths. I might have to look into more with the Whiten thing. But if I hear that he's out, I'm going to switch my tips if I get the chance before the kickoff in the first game Friday.
You do get the chance on Carpool Rugby-League.
Yeah, that is true. It's been altered, but yeah, I'm saying South not with any confidence because they have got quite a bad record with injuries at the moment, and also, as you said, a suspension. I thought he was lucky; he only got 1 week, given he's had a track record, and certainly I'm sure he's been suspended in the last 12 months. But that's what it is. It's South's assuming Whiten's playing. If I hear different, I'm reluctantly going to tip the Newcastle Knights, who've been way off in the last. I think they won maybe their first 2 games actually, and haven't won since, and lost to some not necessarily some of the best teams in the competition.
Yeah.
But we move on.
That's it. We got on Saturday 5:30 the New Zealand Warriors taking on the North Queensland Cowboys. I suppose the key in for the Cowboys, Tawera Martin, he finds his way onto the interchange bench. Everyone else being key ins is on the reserves. So basically, they're going to both be more or less 117 plus Tawera Martin. The New Zealand Warriors have been playing some fantastic football. Nickel Clock Stud has really found some form he had at the Canberra Raiders, like, back when he made his name and people weren't 100% sure of the type of player he was. He's just found that form again. When you look at the Cowboys, though, the Cowboys are somewhat of the... I think it's fair to say they're somewhat of the surprise packer. They're 6th at the moment. They won 4, lost 3. They've played some very good football. However, I don't think people are sold on their performances. I think they're just waiting to see what happens when they verse teams of substance. Eggs on my face. I had Warriors finishing last this year, and
I did too.
And they've done some really good things. I think the Cowboys are playing a team of equal stature at the moment, so it's going to be interesting to see how either team really galvanizes themselves. I think the Metcalf-Clifford battle's going to be just as interesting as the Egan-Robson one. But the guy for me that just seems to be... He's doing things that... And he's a bit of an unsung hero is Nickel Clock Stud. He's getting him on the front foot. He's doing the things that need to happen. He's throwing passes now that you wouldn't expect. And this is allowing them to not only score tries but do some great work. Cowboys are warming to the situation. I think Dearden and Clifford are playing some very good football. McLean, Robson, Tomalomo, they're their front 3. Bateman with Nanai and Cotter, that's a very safe and solid bench. I just think that for me, it's about scoring points, and I think the Warriors have more points. Look at the Warriors winning this one. I don't know why, and not by much.
Yeah, 2 surprise packets. Warriors in the top 4 and Cowboys just outside the top 4. Warriors dreadful in game 1. Cowboys lost the first 3 games, something like that. They were awful. And they're both stringing wins together. They really have surprised me, particularly the Warriors when Fisher Harris caught that I think it's a pec injury. He's out for a long time. But their form hasn't changed, even without their big off-season signing and captain disappearing. Credit to the players and their coach. Likewise, Cowboys were under all sorts of pressure after their first 3 losses. Peyton was sort of seen as possibly being the next coach to get the chop. I think they've won maybe 5 on the bounce, so I'm not sure if they had a bye in there, but they've been really good. I'm going to tip the Cowboys. Again, it's another clash where either team could win this game. As many other clashes we see now in the NRL, I'm not a statistics guru, but it seems as though it's the most even of competitions. With, you got last year's premiers coming in 17th in the wooden spoon position at the moment. No team is undefeated. We've got teams that were expected to really struggle. And as we said before, both of us had the Warriors winning the spoon. These teams are performing well. It's going to be a good one. This is Saturday. I'm not going to see any of the Saturday games. I'm working at the election on Saturday.
The election, yes.
Yeah, so for those of you who are 18 plus who are listening to us, don't forget to vote. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff.
I voted today.
6. Oh, you're already pre-polled. Okay.
Pre-polled, yep.
6 p.m. is when the Bulls shut. So I'm going to miss all of these games. I'll catch the KO mini, I guess. But I think what I'm going to see is Cowboy victory.
Yep. Well, at 7:45 on Saturday, so when polling finishes and we're into the counting, or the very early moments of counting, we have the West Tigers up against us and George Illawarra Dragons. I suppose for the key ins that we need to talk about would be more Corey Allen, Raymond Fatala-Mariner. They're probably the 2 key ins for the Dragons. They're in the Raymond's on the reserve bench. Hang on, there is.
Yeah, he's not in the game.
No, there's Corey Allen and Hamish Stewart.
Allen's playing his first game probably in a couple of years.
Yeah, you've got Corey Allen's definitely in. He's on the wing, and Hamish Stewart's in lock. Sorry, I meant Hamish Stewart. My apologies there. For the Tigers, I think they're going to be 1-17 as normal. Who would have thought if I'd said to you, I don't know, 5 weeks ago, that the Tigers-Dragons game could produce the fireworks that's required? And it could well do. These are 2 sides that are just absolutely, depending on the ones that show up and depending on what they want, I think the Dragons were poor last week. I thought they really they played to their weaknesses. They did not show up. The Tigers, on the other hand, they just keep turning up, and there's a small part of me that says, okay, what Dragon side's going to turn up? No, once you say what side's going to turn up, you're not making the 8. It's just you're in trouble. But the Tigers, for me, last week, they just kept hanging in there, and I had, I was talking to someone, on Monday who said, they should have won it, and I'm just like, you know what? They did win it. It's not they should have won it, they did win it. And they're playing some very good football. They played some very good football. They made some mistakes. But the Tigers are digging themselves out of a hole that very few teams have had to dig themselves out of. And that's what we've got to remember. they've got a cult. They're not digging themselves out of a hole because of the players and what they've done. Their culture and everything about them. Every time a West Tigers player puts on that jersey, they've got a shovel and they're digging themselves out of it. And I thought last week was a very, very, very good example of that. I've got the Tigers winning this one, Griff. What's your thoughts?
I'm going to back the Tigers. Again, this is not a team you can be sure of, but they're having a good year. There's a few games they lost that they should have won, but you say the same thing about the Dragons. There's been a number of games that the Dragons should have won that somehow they managed to lose. At their best, we know the Dragons can perform. They beat the Melbourne Storm a few weeks ago. And the Tigers had a massive win, even though it was only in Golden Point. They'd had an abysmal week with the whole Lockie Galvin story breaking in that lead up to the Parramatta game. And it's believed that, he will become an Eel at some stage. There was all sorts of internal rumblings there, a divided team, many of whom were supporting their coach after the craziness that we heard about with Galvin and his management saying basically that he needed to move on because Benji had coaching deficiencies and wasn't going to be able to bring the best for Galvin in his development. Obviously, he came back the next week and played an important role in the defeat of the Sharks. And then everything sort of calms down. We don't hear about where's he going, internal bickering, etc. It's amazing what one win can do. I think they can make it 2 in a row. Again, they've got some players in form. Their forward pack is going really well, led by Terrell May, Vanua Bole, Pole, whatever you want to call him. He's a very, very good player. And then they bring onto the Royce Hunt comes on and just adds that size and aggression. The Fainu brothers are going well. Talon De Silva is a very good interchange player. They've got points in them. And the big difference this year for the Tigers is they've had a bit of steel in defence. So on form, I say Tigers, but it's amazing how form can change very, very quickly.
Almost by the minute in the NRL at the moment.
That's the way it is. So I'm gonna stick with them.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise if the Dragons get up when they play that power game, they can be very, very hard to stop. Gutherson's had a big year for them. Not last week though, unfortunately. He was mesmerised by the dummies of the Roosters.
And they get a case of the dropsies, the old Dragons.
Well, you just don't know. You don't know. But I'm going to stick Tigers for this week. See how we go with that tip.
Yep, I agree. Interesting you mentioned Tyrell May. Thought he had a great game last week. He made that one mistake late in the game, and he just
extra time started. But
poor bugger. But overall, very, very good.
It's looking like he'll be running out in blue mid-season.
And you know what? We were actually going to have a mini chat about that, I think. The Titans of the Gold Coast at 1:50 on Sunday play the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, who are in first place. Look, ins and outs. I suppose the outs for the Dogs, as named, Curran, Burton, Tupanua. Well, we know what their story is. There's some really interesting stuff flying around that, like Blake Taft, he's made his way into the interchange. There's some news around Connor Tracy, whether they see him as the long-term fullback. I don't know whether it's just silly noise or it's actually some real, some real information. We've got the Big Isaac in on the interchange, the same as Big Tino. He's there for the Titans. It's like I said, this is another game where I go, the Dogs should win. Dogs should win and win well. However, what I want to see from the Dogs, I want to see people like Toby Sexton. I want to see the forwards lay a really solid foundation. Can I just say, Reid Marnie is the guy who needs to lead this side around, lead them well. I'm dancing around the situation because I'm trying to find a nice way to say this, and maybe I haven't found a nice way to say it. The Bulldogs just seem to want to be this side that play this ugly type of football and beat you into submission, and don't care if they give away penalties, don't care if what they do. At the end of the day, they care about the scoreline. I think Reid Marnie needs a real check of himself and remember how talented he is as a rugby league player. Because I think last week was a massive wake-up call that this bully, angry, aggressive style of rugby league can easily be defeated by skill. And that's what happened last week. Do the Titans have what the Bulldogs can present? Nah, probably not. But if the Bulldogs want to play this ugly type of rugby league that furthermore gets them another 2-3 week suspension, they're running into an origin period that, if you're suspended you can't play. I get that. But they're running into a period where to make hay while the sun shines will be lost significantly. I think the Bulldogs need to have a very long, hard look at themselves and say, do we want to start winning a competition on pure gamesmanship and skill? Or do we just want to bash the crap out of the opposition and play this ugly style of rugby league? And that's what they're playing at the moment. People talk about the Dogs of War. What we forget was the Dogs of War were the fittest club I have ever seen in rugby league. They were brilliant. Their Monday morning training was a 5-kilometre run every morning. And it would, without fail, rain, hail or shine. The Dogs of War were not this ugly... I'm looking at this ugly rugby league team that played... I don't want to say it's bad sport. It's not bad sportsmanship. That's not fair. But it's just this silly rugby league that last week exposed them to the point where they had 3 people found guilty and will not play this week. They have to wise up, Canterbury, if they want to win, and I think they should start this week. I've got Canterbury winning, but geez, I hope people like Reid Marnie, Villami Kickow, Jamin Salmon, Kurt Mann off the bench, but more importantly, people like Toby Sexton, Stephen Crichton, Bronson Sherry, and Connor Tracy start that ball rolling.
Yeah, I'm tipping the Bulldogs because the team they're playing is called the Gold Coast Titans.
Yeah, that's true.
Bulldogs are down on their best because of, as you mentioned, those suspensions. It's a very small bench. Kurt
It is,
Mann,
isn't it?
Harry Hayes is a forward, more I think a back rower. Moran's a very small forward, and Taff is a utility back.
They're all around the 100 kilos, if that.
Combined.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Like they're I think
Yeah, it's a
Hayes is
small
probably
bench.
just a frag over 100.
Yeah, I
don't think Moran would be over 100, and Blake.
Oh no, he's well below.
Taft
He
wouldn't
might be in
be.
the 80s.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, let's have a look. 97.
Is he? Yeah, I don't look that much.
Yeah, Moran's 97. Sorry, Hayes 97. Moran. Oh, Moran's 97, and Taft wouldn't be much more.
I think they were holding some weights when they stood up.
They drank water. We used to watch The Biggest Loser. We know all the tips and tricks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We used to watch the tips and tricks. Yeah, that's right. If you had immunity, mate, you drank a dam.
I think the Titans are a candidate for The Biggest Loser because they've been awful.
They have been horrible, haven't they?
I had them in my top 8 because I looked at the squad and you just look at the names there and you think there's some high quality players who just don't seem to be able to gel often enough. Probably not the biggest name in their team, but maybe the second biggest, David Fafita, has been dropped off the interchange and will just be on the extended bench. They might win. They have the ability to win. They've got players who are very capable, particularly in attack, not quite so good in defence. Plenty of pace with the likes of Khan Pereira, Sami Kelly, AJ Brimson. But the two teams line up. I think they look a decent chance, even without Fafita. But I'm going to stick with the team that has been the most consistent and will really want to bounce back after a poor showing last week. So I'm going to stick with the Bulldogs.
On 4:05 on Sunday, we have the Penny Panthers up against the Brisbane Broncos. Panthers home game, and a broken record on how I think this is stupid that the Brisbane Broncos can be an away team in Suncorp. But anyway,
they often are.
You know what, Griffo? More often than not, it shits me to tears. Brad Schneider is out for the Penrith Panthers. He tried to fight a charge of 2 weeks.
He's injured, Schneider.
Who?
It's Sorensen.
Sorensen, sorry.
He's still on the official list.
Sorensen, sorry, that's my bad. You're 100% correct. Sorensen fought a charge and he actually lost that. So he's 3 weeks now.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
3 weeks. So he had 2 weeks, fought the charge. I personally don't know why he fought it, but anyway. If for the Brisbane Broncos, we have Jock Madden. He's on the extended bench. The one I'm keen to talk about on the Jordan Ricky, he's in the starting lineup.
He missed last week.
Yep, Penrith Panthers versus the Broncos. This is a really interesting match. Look, Griffo, I'm not going to talk much about the Penrith Panthers. They're your team. You know them well. I'm going to say this. This is such an important game for Penrith, and you know, I suppose every game's an important game for Penrith. If they lose this game this week, we are going to enter into a origin period where I dare say 3 to 5 Penrith players will be playing origin. I hope they're playing origin. I'd love them to play origin. But those 3 to 5 Penrith players haven't been able to ice the game when they're in, and I doubt they'll be able to ice it for Penrith when they're out. So there's some games coming up for Penrith where they're going to have some key personnel out. At the moment, they are struggling. Full stop. You know, they're basically 2 wins. The first win against the Sharks, and the other week. I just think that, look, I'm going to tip the Broncos because the way I saw them play last week and Adam Reynolds doing what he did, I just think that their forward pack just seem to be relentless at the moment. Their wingers are creating some very, very good. They're creating some very, very good space. No disrespect to Alamotti or Jenkins, who are going to be in the side, but there's a guy called Brian To'o who's not, and that helps greatly. Down on troops and missing some key personnel. Dylan Edwards is trying to do everything. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about Penrith. You can do it in far better detail than I can, but in my opinion, I think the Brisbane Broncos just has the troops and the confidence that Penrith doesn't have at the moment, Griff.
Yeah, I've tipped Brisbane to win this game. I can't. So I've watched 4 of the games the Panthers have played. I watched them win in Vegas, and they did well to win that game. The Sharks are a good side and tested Penrith, but Penrith were able to score 1 more try than the Sharks and got the points. But I've seen live at 3 games at Parramatta Stadium where been very similar scenarios, plus some other games that they've lost where they're not playing rugby league like they have when they were the dominant team for 4 years. You mentioned Toto being out. That's a massive loss. They're just not getting good field position as they normally would, and he's their main meter man, and they're really missing him. But it's more than that. The forwards don't seem to be able to go forward. There's a lack of aggression.
They look gassed, Griffo.
They're just not. They're not on their game. Mistakes are the norm rather than the exception. And whereas in the past, if they made a mistake, more often than not, they'd be able to defend their line. It's not been that way this year. They're getting picked apart reasonably easy. Casey McLean has copped, and I hope the guy doesn't look at social media because he's just copping it. Like, I don't think he's... I think he's a very good player, actually. But he's made some mistakes, particularly in defence, that have led to tries. And he was playing alongside Blaise Talungi and then Jenkins outside, a very inexperienced group of men who would not have defended together before, and they've just found out. Personally, if I was picking the team, I would have had McLean on the wing. I think I talked about Marky Mark earlier as a really good attacking player, but still needing to develop his defence. Well, I think McLean is similar, and I think he, offered that on the wing. He's tall, he's athletic, he's quick. And I just think he offers more there. But Jenkins is okay. He's been he's tried hard. I just think he's not quite a first grader, to be fair. He's a backup player. He's not someone that you're putting in there week to week, even with the injury to To'oi. I didn't want to bag the team, but I'm just saying what I've seen. They are not playing the style of rugby league that was successful. They're trying to, but they give away too many easy penalties. They give away 6 agains, and then they give away 6 points. That's just been the way pretty much every game has gone.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that they'll just get railroaded by the Broncos forwards. I'm not sure who will come in for Sorensen. It might be that they might start with Maverick Geyer in the back row. It might be they might start with Papali'i. They've sort of been using him as a middle for the last couple of weeks, and I think that's probably serves the team best. He came on against the Roosters 2 weeks ago, and I thought he was actually the difference. He actually ran with intent. He was making yardage, and not so much last week against Manly, but certainly he brought that aggression and that go forward that's been lacking. I sort of last week they got into a position. They didn't play well in the first half. They were down 14-0. They didn't have the rub of the green with some decisions, but Manly were definitely the better team. They got 2 tries to get it back to maybe 14-10, and then Luke Summerton was awarded a try by referee Sharp. The video ref correctly ruled was no try. He was held up. So going from that excitement of being in a position, Cleary would have kicked the goal, was just next to the post, was looking like we're going to be 16-14 to the good, and then try taken off, and then we didn't score again, and Manly got a few tries. Again, last week, a player from the other team sent to the sin bin, and I don't think we won that 10 minutes on the scoreboard. There was an awful drop from Moses. I can't explain why he dropped the ball. We were attacking Manly, not in the 20-metre zone, but just outside that, and that really turned the game. Penrith did have the momentum, which is something that they haven't had too often. I think, okay, we're gonna win this game. But then that drop ball, and it turned to poo, let's say, after that. And yes, there were some bad decisions from the officials, but that didn't cost Penrith the game. Penrith cost Penrith the game. Manly had a few bad calls against them as well, but bright spots. I thought Tago was good last week. He hasn't been at his best, but I thought he was the best player for Penrith last week. Dylan Edwards is making a lot of mistakes. I couldn't pick him at the moment.
No, I that's why I said 3 to 5. I don't know if he's the fullback for New South Wales.
Not unless he's got to get these mistakes out of his game. His game is built on that. He missed a tackle that I think it was Tommy Talau went over for either the first or second try, and Edwards just should have nailed him. He it wasn't happening all that often, these sorts of mistakes in previous years. Cleary is not at his best at the moment. Isaiah Yeo even is not at his best. If those guys don't fire, Penrith's no hope in this game. They're the three big players for the Panthers: Edwards, Cleary, Yeo. They have to come back to their best form to be any chance. And I can't back them this week. I want them to win, obviously, but I can't see it happening. They're going to play in a hostile environment where the other team, it's their home city, it's their home ground, even though it's a Penrith home game. I can't see a Panthers victory. I hope they win, but they've not been able to play 80 minutes of good rugby league in one game, and the Broncos will score tries. I've no doubt about that. I don't know. I'm sounding a little bit pessimistic, but I think it's more realistic than pessimistic. Mathematically, they're not that far out of the 8, even though they've only won 2 games because of the closeness of the competition. And I looked at, had they have had a different result last week, they would have been about 12th or something like that. But they're not. And this is a game that Broncos go in as favourites. They're expected to win based on the fact that they played really well last week. They weren't good the week before. So they're themselves trying to establish consistency in their game. On paper, it's reasonably evenly matched. Mitch Kenny copping a 2-week ban hurts them immensely. He's really the guy that leads the defence. I thought he should have challenged the 2-week ban, but they copped it. He missed last week, and he'll miss this week. And particularly against those Broncos forwards, Kenny would have been crucial in stopping that go forward of the guys like, Haas, Carrigan. So the heart will always say Panthers, but the head is going to overrule, and I think Brisbane win this game.
Fair call, Griff. Fair call. Well, the last game on Sunday at 6:25 at Suncorp Stadium, we'll see the Melbourne Storm taking on the Canberra Raiders.
Match of the round, I think.
I agree. I actually think this is going to be a cracking game. Big Nelson in, Kamakamika in. Nelson on extended bench, Kamakamika in their well, not their starting side, but in their top 17. This is a cracking game unfolding. We got the Raiders, who are in this vein of form, which is very good at the moment, versus the Storm, who are the Storm. They're the competition heavyweights. They're the competition favourites. They're pushed every week, but they just seem to win. We have, I think, for me, the key guy, the Pap, Ryan Pappenhausen, Falongo also on the wing, just doing some great things. I want to see, can I just say this? Before I'm absolutely sold on the Storm, Jerome Hughes is back this week. I want to see Munster and Hughes absolutely just rip and tear. Just absolutely own this. Garlic and Lario for in the lock. Just absolutely there. 1, 6, 7, 9, 13 rip and tear. For the Raiders, these guys are batting well above their weight at the moment. Fogarty and Strange are just absolutely playing some brilliant football. Horsburgh, Starling, Hudson Young, Joseph Tarpany, captain, Morgan Smithies, who we spoke about a couple of years ago on this podcast on how he can do. Zach Hoskins off the bench, Joseph Papali'i off the bench. Look, I'm picking the Storm in this game, but I think this is going to be an absolutely ripping game to watch. I hope that the Raiders turn up, because this for me is, I agree, match of the round, Griffo.
Yeah, I think it shapes as the match around. Canberra are the big surprise packets, I think, of 2025. Some people had them as wooden spooners this year, which they love that sort of thing. Ricky, just uses that. And he's got a team that is firing. And they've got a lot of speed in the back line, speed and power. The forwards are getting the job done really well. Melbourne have, I think, been the second best team this year behind the Bulldogs. They've lost 2 games, but won most of their games, some of them very convincingly. I think they've got the best squad, but this is some way from their best team, best 17, that due to injuries. So Howarth out injured. We haven't seen, I don't think, Will Warbrick at all. You mentioned Nelson's on the extended bench. I don't think we'll see Nelson this week. But he's in Melbourne's best 17 when he's fit and well. I think he's had a head injury that has been concern for him. I think they'll get the job done, because what they do have is, and you mentioned some of these guys, Ryan Pappenhausen, the Flying Dutchman, he's been in great form. Monster's been in very good form, and obviously Jerome Hughes is a star. The key out, obviously, Harry Grant. They really don't perform anywhere near their best without that guy in the team, their captain, and a greatly skillful player. That's the main reason, I think, where Canberra really a realistic chance of winning this game. Melbourne, at their best, would account for Canberra. But the Raiders are a big chance in this game. But I'm going to stick with the Storm based on the 1, the 6, and the 7. And they've still got a very good forward pack. But it wouldn't surprise to see the Green Machine get the job done. And they're in the top 4 for a reason, and that is because they've been playing really good football.
Well, that's the round it is. Round 9 for the NRL. Griffo, anything you'd like to add regarding round 9? Any other?
Yeah, it's Magic Round. A lot of people going to be going up to Brisbane. I believe the expected weather is good.
Good.
To any of our listeners who are making the trip to Brisbane, have a great weekend.
Yep, travel safe.
It's good to be back with you this week, and we look forward to a big game, a big round. I'll hope with fingers crossed that my team can bounce back. But thank you for listening, and hopefully we're back with you again next week.
Griffo,
and thank you, Shano.
Griffo, as always, a pleasure to share this with you. To our listeners, thank you for listening. It's been brilliant as always. Have a great week, everyone. Hope your team wins, and be good, be safe, take care. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.